Hello and welcome to the long-awaited Varka review, a character mentioned since the beginning of the game, since he is, of course, tied to Monsel, the first area of this entire game. And yeah, we've all been expecting Varka, and he was teased in the latest Natlan stuff. And then, of course, Nodokrai came in, and everybody's like, Varka! And yeah, I mean, when you tell me that they're gonna get Sugita, my boy Sugita, for Varka, I mean, of course, everybody's gonna get hyped to high hell. A long-awaited character, plus you get one of the most popular Japanese seiyus. Boy, this is it. So, Varka is a very special character. He doesn't just wield a claymore or transform his weapon to something else. He instead wields 3 of them. Okay, I won't be making this joke too many times in this video, but definitely will make it again. But yes, Varka is an Anemo Claymore character. At first glance, he seems like a very versatile character, which is something that Genshin has kind of lost quite a lot lately. But unfortunately, right now, he gets somewhat locked into a specific team comp because of his passives, and most likely in the future, Nicole is going to be his best support, and since we know her element, yeah. But why is that? Well, we have to take a good detailed look into his abilities and see why that is, so why don't we begin? Varka's attacks are basically half of his damage, although only the animations are used, so we will look at them. They are fantastic, honestly, and the sound effects that they've added are also amazing. 3 claymores, but actually fast attacking would have been unbelievable until now with how Genshin usually treats regular claymore characters. And I say regular because of, Mavuik and her special shit, but then everybody else with claymores is pretty slow or has some sort of attack speed effect, but if they don't have that attack speed effect, they attack like shit. Although, you won't need to level up Varka's auto attack talent because his skill has its own attack multipliers, so you can actually skip that. And, well, speaking of, Varka's skill is the bread and butter of his kit. Varka does a small jump and dash attack, you can say, on an enemy and converts the damage of his claymores into Anemo and then one of the Fek elements. Fek, yes, that's what it is. It's PHEC for Pyro, Hydro, Electro, Cryo. It's Fek. Get used to me saying that. It's one of the Fek elements if they are present in the team. And just like Swirl, the infusion does follow the Fek order, Pyro, Hydro, Electro, Cryo. Additionally, while this infusion is active, Varka will start a cooldown on a charge for his now special enhanced skill and charge attack. When the cooldown is over and Varka now gains a charge, you can either do an enhanced skill or enhanced charge attack. Now, every additional talent is tied to this skill, so I will quickly mention Varka's burst because it's simple, so before we dive into the deep details of his playstyle through his talents. His burst, very simply, is a big AoE slash attack that deals Anemo and Fek damage just like his skill. It's one Anemo slice and then one of the Fek elements in that order. The multipliers are kind of not that good. Varka's Ascension talents do nothing to increase its damage, so unfortunately it ends up being not used in a rotation because it gives you nothing. And as we will see, Varka's own field time is pretty significant, so by the time you are done with Varka's main combo, there are no buffs or anything to help the burst at the end. And if you were to use it at the start, you will then lose the buffs on the main combo that deals significantly more damage than the burst. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get to his extra talents. His first talent is that depending on the amount of Anemo and Fek units on the team, Varka gains a 10% Anemo damage bonus and a damage bonus based on the Fek order of the elements present for every 1000 attack he has, up to 25%. So at 2.5k attack, this maxes out. And also, his enhanced abilities will deal up to 220% of their original damage. With 2 Anemo and 2 other units, it's 140%, and to get the 220, you need 2 Anemo units and 2 of the same Fek element. This is one of the limiting factors of Varka's team building, mostly because of the second Anemo unit, because we have many good sub-DPSs and supports for Varka in the Fek roster, but Anemo is kind of in a weird space for him, but we will see that in the teammates section of the review. In the end, with Varka's intended themes and playstyle, you don't really notice it that much, that it's limiting, but in modes like Imaginarium Theater, it can be the difference between an easy star clear and many retries. Or just, finding out some weird team comps, man. Because it is a giant difference. 140 to 220 is really, really big. As for his second Ascension talent, it makes it so when other units trigger Swirl, Varka gains a stacking buff on all of his damage, basically, except for his burst, of course. So you kind of need the second Anemo character in order to, well, trigger Swirl with his Ascension talent. Because, of course, why would Varka himself be able to trigger that? Ay. And lastly is his Hexere talent, which makes the cooldown on his enhanced ability charges go down by 1 second every time he hits enemies with his normal attacks. As far as I have experienced with Varka, this doesn't have a cooldown. It doesn't say that it has a cooldown, but the way I guess it works is that each attack of his attack chain will give you that 1 second cooldown reduction. And very last, before I talk about his playstyle, Varka's early cons are really, really disappointing. His C1 does give him a charge immediately when he uses his skill and makes, as far as I know, only the first of his enhanced abilities deal extra damage, because that's how it's worded. And then his C2 is that when you use his enhanced abilities, he just does an extra attack. That's it. Is the scaling on that attack insane? Yes, but that's for a modern C2 is beyond basic for an effect. Seriously beyond basic for an effect. To just say, here's 800% scaling, it's just an extra attack. And like, yeah, C2 Varka is gonna fucking hit like a truck, but that's it? Nothing interesting to change the playstyle a little bit, something? It's really basic again for a modern C2. So, how about his playstyle, which has me mad for many reasons, honestly. Well, the way it goes is that you choose one other Anemo unit, Anemo character, and 2 characters of the same element, and now your Varka is basically an extra DPS of that element. After all skills and buffs are in place, Varka comes in, uses his skill, and then non-stop attacks until he has a charge, and then he uses either his special skill or charge attack. With a Hex character in the party, you should easily be able to get 2 charges, 3 is kind of not possible, even with a stationary enemy, and even if you were able to get it, as mentioned before, it will be completely unbuffed, so it's not worth it in the slightest. Now, as you most likely spotted, I mentioned Varka turns into a DPS of the element of the 2 characters that you chose. And that is because Varka isn't in the slightest a mixed DPS character. And that is because his Anemo damage is pitiful compared to the other elements' damage. And the funny thing about that is that his best team right now, and most likely even with Nicole, doesn't have specific element damage bonuses. It has res reduction for both Anemo and Pyro, yes, slightly more for Pyro, but still, and then attack buffs and general damage buffs. But because they have fucked his multipliers like hell, his Anemo damage still ends up being like a third of his other element damage, if less even. This is so insane. Again, as I said, most of his teams have general stat and damage buffs, but the damage difference of his Anemo damage is massive. This is one of the reasons why I really despise what they have done with Varka. He could have been such an interesting character to try team comps with, maybe where you max either his Anemo damage or his other element damage, or you balance them out, and that could have been depending on the content that you are going up against or maybe any buffs present, but nope. Just try maxing out his Anemo damage and you will be very, very sad with how low it is. The other thing that has me madly baffled is why the fuck can he only do either an enhanced skill or charged attack? They have basically the exact same multipliers, by the way. And just as I told you, his teams don't really specifically buff either one. There aren't teams that buff his skill damage more, so use that, or teams that buff the charged attack damage more, so use that instead. They are general stat and damage buffs, and they knew that, so what is the point of having them? And what is the point in not allowing Varka to use both with only one charge? I mean, of course, we gotta keep that for his constellations. Oh wait, it only changes on his C6! Wow! This could have and should have been added to his Hexere talent, that Varka can use both his enhanced abilities with only one charge. It isn't just a damage thing. Design-wise, it makes no sense unless you want people to giga-wail for his C6. At the very least, it could have been his C2. Right? That's the interesting effect of his C2, that, hey, you can use one charge for both of this shit. Nope. That's why I'm so mad about Varka. This supposed dual element character completely ignores the Anemo damage part. Like, at the very least, Chaska doesn't deal Anemo damage. She completely converts her shit. But yeah, Varka completely ignores it because it's so low. And then he's given a special charge attack and skill, but there is no reason to use both of them. Seriously, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Even his artifacts don't help with that. Or even his signature. It could have been something like Child's signature stuff that needs you to hit with multiple things to get multiple stacks, but nope. No reason whatsoever to use both in a rotation. Not at all. Like, what? Ay. Quickly covering his artifacts. It's the new Hexery set. Who could have guessed? And that's about it. It's attack, and then it's crit rate. It's the Hexery set. There's no real reason to use anything else. I guess at the very beginning of your journey, I would recommend Gladiators, and there you would have a reason to use his charge attack because that's what it buffs. As for stats, it's attack on his sands. Who could have guessed? Then for your goblet, elemental damage goblet and attack goblets do trade blows. And one with significantly better substats will outpace the other. For ease of mind, I would stick to attack goblets, especially for bringing Varka to Imaginarium Theater, because you can't exactly guess what team you might end up running. Like, yes, it's usually 2 Fek elements and then Anemo, if Anemo is present, so you don't know if it's gonna be one of the elements or the other elements, so stick with attack. But for content like the Abyss or Shillian, use what's best. And then his circlet is most likely going to be crit damage, since the Hexery set does give you a big 20% crit rate buff. And then also his signature does also give him crit rate, so you're almost gonna overcap. I almost overcap actually with my Varka at 95 crit rate with the 20% crit rate buff. So there's that. But yeah, it's most likely gonna be crit rate, and then of course crit damage, and then of course the substats are going to be crit, attack, and that's it, because he doesn't use elemental, he doesn't need his burst, so no energy recharge needed, no elemental mastery because he ain't doing swirl damage, that's for sure, and yeah, so nothing else. Before moving on to teammates, definitely need noting that you need a Viridescent holder in the team. That Senko Anemo needs to have that, so if you plan on using someone like, I don't know, Faruzan or Venti, and they were on a different set, well, better switch them up. And that's very annoying, because one time you want to be running, I don't know, Venti DPS, since he is pretty good right now, and you want to switch him to the Hexery set, and then the other one you want him to be the support for your Varka team, and then you need to switch back, and we still don't have fucking artifact loadouts. Yeah. Yeah, also the Viridescent holder, yeah, it's even more res reduction on top of the teammates that we're gonna talk about right now. It's even more res reduction on the other element, but so you reduce so much of the resistances that it goes to the negatives, and then res reduction on the negatives is really just not needed in the slightest. Which, as said, moves us on to teammates. Here we will look at the Anemos first, since you always need a second one, and then split them up into element duos that you will mostly see. I mean, element duos, the duo characters that you will have to use of each element. For Anemos, we have Venti, being one of his best teammates. Of course, he has unrivaled grouping, and they've definitely wanted you to do that with the new boss on Shillian and shit. But the most important thing is Venti carrying Elegy, being able to carry Elegy and using it very easily, and his Hexery 50% damage buff when someone triggers Swirl, which Varka always does. Also, his energy restoration can be really nice for your team supports and sub DPSs, and yeah, he's also your Hexery needed teammate. So he's usually the best package overall. Kazuzu does plenty fine. Freedom Sworn can be a reason to use the enhanced charge attack, and equalizes a bit with Elegy because it gives you the 20% attack buff of Elegy of the end, and then the charge attack buff. And Kazuha can feel more snappy to use than Venti for a faster rotation if needed. Honestly, because I have Freedom Sworn, but I have felt that my Varka deals more damage with Kazuha than Venti. Like, yeah, Venti has that 50% damage buff, but when my Pyro damage is 8k plus higher compared to Venti on one of Varka's normal attacks, and I lost like 3000 on the Anemo damage, I will choose Kazuha, but Elegy does help even out the field a bit, and depending on your Venti build and cons as well, he should offer much more damage himself than Kazuha, but at like C0 for both of them, Kazuha can definitely edge out a bit. Sucrose is a very good budget choice, definitely at C6, because before that she's mostly just a Hexarray filler, because at C6 you get her elemental damage bonus, and her Hexarray damage bonus becomes less shit than it usually is, and also 3 Link Tails, but before C6 you might want to find another Hexarray character, honestly, because she will only be there for 3 Link Tails, and for like, what, a 7% damage buff through the Hexarray passive, like, you might want to find somebody else to fill the Hexarray spot and use another Anemo character that does a little bit more than Sucrose. Also, Sucrose is kind of really useful now for lunar stuff, so you're most likely, she's most likely there. Again, Imaginarium Theater and stuff can help. Faruzan is kind of not worth it, of course, at C6 as well. Varka's Anemo damage, as said, is pitiful. You might want to try it out with like a Furina and then Mona for the Hexarray passives or something else for the fun of it, but quickly you will see the disappointment in Varka's Anemo numbers. Jan, which by the way they call her Jean, and I can understand because Monstal, I have been calling her Jan because Jean-Pierre Polnareff, genuinely, and her name is usually Jean, because Monstal is Germany mostly, but fuck you, I'm gonna call her Jan. She's fine, definitely at C4 with her Anemo res reduction for just a little bit more helping out. You will mostly see her with Furina for healing. She doesn't offer anything else. Her attack speed buff at C2 does basically nothing for Varka. And honestly, we kinda need a second wave of Hexarray buffs because Jan is like very much connected to them. Like she's as much connected as Sucrose, honestly. So where is her buffs? She could easily be the Hexarray character. Anyways, Xianyun, oh boy, I forgot to tell you that Varka cannot plunge attack, because that makes sense. So she's completely out of the picture. Lanyan can be your sustain for her shield and buff with 3 Link Tails, and that's about it. And lastly, Ifa could provide a Cinder City buff, but then you don't have Viridescent. So, yeah. Then we move to Pyro, which is Varka's #1 team composition. The two boys here are Bennett and Durin. Durin for his Resistance Shred for Anemo and Pyro and Hexarray, and Bennett because Bennett. After those, there isn't much to buff Varka or the team in general. Like, Durin kind of gets a little bit of a damage, Durin, it does okay damage through his burst, especially if you're running Bennett, you most likely can switch Durin to the Hexarray set, but if you're gonna switch Durin to other teams, then he's gonna stick to Nobles. We really need to find a better supporting set for the man. But yeah, except for Durin and Bennett, some use Ling as a sub DPS, some might use Toma for the sustain and the attack damage buff at his C6. I have not seen a single soul use Daisha for good reasons, because she does fuck all. I have seen some Sevruses out there, but like, why? Really? Yeah, her C6 buff doesn't need only Pyro and Electro, but I think she ends up a big waste if she's C6 in a Varka team. I would rather build a Razor team and try that out with a C6 Sevrus, and then Official, man. You know how good that is? Genuinely, it's really fun. Second most popular element kind of ties between Hydro and Cryo. For Hydro, I already mentioned Furina, who could have guessed, and Mona, wow, so different with Furina. But other from those, once again, you don't have anyone that benefits Varka, like the two Pyro boys. Xingqiu is Xingqiu, yeah, he can offer you some sub DPS and all the things that Xingqiu does, but nothing for Varka himself. Yelan can offer a small damage boost, but Mona is usually a much better choice with her Hexarray buffs. Candace, candy's nuts fit in your mouth. Not much, a small normal attack damage boost, but you want to buff everything on Varka, and especially charge attack damage or skills, so at the least she can be used in Imaginarium Theater, and that's it. And then no soul is gonna use Dahlia or Sijuin with him, so yeah. Same is kind of the thing for Cryo. The main teammates is Shenhe and Escoffier for very obvious reasons. Even though Escoffier doesn't get her max res reduction, alongside Viridescent, it evens out. Other than those, once again, no one does much for Varka. I did have fun with Chongyun, because he's actually kind of decent. The attack speed buff doesn't matter for one of his Ascension talents, but his C2 skill cooldown reduction does make the rotation pretty nice, because it cuts around 1 second from Varka's charges, so you can even fit in a third charge a bit easier. Still not gonna be very buffed, but we don't have many buffers anyways in the cryo team. But yeah, so for Imaginarium Theater and having some fun with weird builds, I do recommend him. He also does have a small cryo res reduction effect. So yeah, I had some fun with Chongyun. You might see it in the background footage, where because of the 1 second cooldown reduction, that 1 to 1.5, it's around there, that Chongyun gives you with his C2, you can use 2 of Varka's skills, then burst with Varka, and then throw in a third skill. Just because, again, it's not gonna be buffed, but depending on the cryo characters you're using, the buffs don't really matter anyways. So I liked it. It wasn't half bad. Damage-wise, not even close to the Pyro team, but still really fun. And hell, in the background footage you can see it did a difficulty 5 of Stygian, so that's something. And then everybody else in Cryo is not a really good support or sub DPS, or they're a sub DPS that doesn't really matter. See Kaeya, Rosaria, Diona, Charlotte, Layla, Kitlali does nothing, it can't proc Cinder City, so she is double out actually. But yeah, all of those, yeah, you can give them some sort of supporting weapon for something, and yeah, they're like not the greatest support, or not the great, or they're a sub DPS that is okay. But that's about it. Last is Electro, and just simply don't. Just don't. Main problem is that there is no Electro buffer that has a good duration on their buffs. Fischl can't use her Hexarray buffs for big attack buffs unless the enemy has a non-stop Pyro aura. And then hopefully it's a boss, because you're gonna overload the shit out of them and they're gonna get knocked everywhere. Sarah's buffs last for 6 seconds, which might not even be enough for one enhanced ability to get buffed. Auron can't buff with Cinder, because you can't, the way Swirl works with these characters, and Cinder doesn't work. Ian Sun needs movement, and Varka kind of wants to non-stop attack, and he doesn't move a lot while doing that, so keeping her buffs up is not easy or sustainable, and also she can't proc Cinder City. So you see how Electro is giga-fucked. And yeah, it's mostly Pyro. Maybe someone might run the Hydro team that does okay, or the Cryo team. I did have plenty of fun, as I said, playing the Cryo team in the background. But yeah, if I want to play Cryo, I'll just use my C1 R1 Risley and do kind of much better. And that's the thing I can tell you, that Varka has options, and yeah, they are fun to play, but when those options are very far behind this Pyro team, you just end up playing the Pyro team instead of struggling like an idiot to beat content with the other variants. Like, I can tell you it's fun, or somebody can tell you it's, oh, look at the numbers on a stationary, no resistances whatsoever target dummy in Miliastra Wonderland, but then when you actually go to the actual content, you see that, oh boy, it's not like that at all. Like, even the Cryo team that I mentioned, it needed a Elegy for the End Venti and a Freedom Sworn Layla. By the way, I'm pretty sure they do stack, the two different, whatever the fucking name of this weapon series is, buffs. But yeah, like at the very least, I needed one of those. And well, speaking of weapons, now time for Varka's weapon choices. Very much, it's about picking any of the DPS claymores and going with it. For 4 stars and free, Blackcliff is okay. It's not gonna do much unless there's lots of enemies. Prototype is alright, honestly. I kind of would prefer Blackcliff, I guess, but you know, you're using your Star Glitter there. Tidal Shadow is better than them, but does need billets. Earthshaker isn't half bad, because, well, you're gonna lock Varka to the Pyro team, but again, it's his best one, so using Earthshaker isn't that difficult, but you must use his enhanced skill with it, because that's specifically what it buffs. And again, it needs billets. So that's that. As for the non-free options, Serpent Spine is Serpent Spine. It's kind of the base for calculations, but with Varka right now, I expect Nicole to change that. Not usually running a shielder, getting and keeping all 5 stacks is not easy at all. And then Talking Stick is equally fine, but it does also lock you like Earthshaker into the Pyro team and Bennett on top of that. So if you at all want to use Nicole, who I severely doubt will make characters affected with Pyro, choose Serpent Spine. As for 5 stars, I mean, if it's for DPSs, Varka will use it. Wolf's Gravestone from the standard was, or is, because they use it for cutscenes sometimes, his second signature weapon, and it ranks okay. It's better than the 4 stars, even R1 Serpent Spine gets outmatched by Wolf's Gravestone, especially with Wolf's Gravestone buff. So instead of wasting Primos or Bunny, you can very much use it if you have it. The Unforged should become decent if Nicole ends up as a shielder. Red Horn, that's Ito's weapon, is there only for its crit stats. Beacon, that's Dacia's weapon, is the same, but it does offer some extra attack. It does offer you extra attack if you get hit, which, I mean, kind of does happen with Varka without a shielder. Same for Navia's Verdict. It's also the same with just some crit stats and then a passive attack buff. Everything else is completely out. Kinnich's weapon can be pretty good against Dendro Aura enemies. Actually, at the very least, you do get a stack of its effect when you hit enemies with a skill. So at the very beginning, it's not completely bad with Varka because you hit them with the skill. Mafuika's weapon is Mafuika's weapon, it's pretty good. And last is Varka's own signature, which is the best for him, especially since they are adding freaking Hexere passives onto these. Thanks. That attack speed buff it has, I really don't know how to feel about it. He's a Claymore character, and attack speed isn't going to help him. So I highly doubt that it makes a significant difference. But of course, everything else that it has boosts Varka quite a lot. I do recommend grabbing his weapon first before trying for Constellations. It is a much, much better investment compared to his Constellations. Seriously, the damage boost is much better. And that's it for Varka. I mean, you bring Sugita here. There is no way I miss getting him. Also, Sugita has been in a lot of stuff in the past anime seasons. But it really feels like Varka got sabotaged. I don't know how to say it, but it's not just for numbers' sake. Literally, it's not just for DPS sake. As I ranted a bit, the whole choosing between an enhanced skill or charged attack with the same multipliers makes no sense design-wise. And it could have helped Varka so much. And as I have also mentioned her a ton this video, everyone is betting that Nicole is going to be his damage fixer. Because, of course. Also, I don't know, if Nicole doesn't have one mode where she buffs charged attacks and one mode where she buffs skill damage, the whole enhanced skill and charge attack thingy is even worse. But seriously, man, we got one of the most popular Japanese seiyus molded a character based on character he has voiced before. He's literally a mix of Gintoki and Joseph Joestar. And then it's on a character that has been mentioned since the beginning of the game with ties to many lore important characters, only to make him okay and then sell you the big waifu damage booster instead. Listen, I don't hate Nicole. I actually like her more than Alice. But when the entire community basically surrenders to the notion that she's going to be the fix, it kind of puts a big sour taste in your mouth now, doesn't it? Anyways, thank you for watching. And just a small note, if I am late for any upcoming videos, the next one should be this month's Abyss in Imaginarium Theater. Know that I'm locked in my house addictively reading the later arcs of the Re:Zero web novel because I need to catch up. And when I read Re:Zero, nothing stops me. See ya!